Your dream bike just got pricier. Thanks, Tariffs.
Already broke buying a bike? Brace yourself.
Bike boom, price doom, Tariff strikes again.
All right, welcome back to episode 10 of Bespoke Endurance, for the Recreational Rider to Racer podcast series, where Josh and I are on this journey going from recreational cyclists to racers. So the caveat to this podcast is we are not professional riders. We are regular guys with regular jobs and families trying to figure this out and balance life. If any of that interests you, then you are in the right place.
Yep. Subscribe to the channel. Help it grow.
All right. So before we jump into our main discussion today, just catching up. You know, it's been a while. It's been a week. How's your week been?
It's been good. Yeah, I've had a good week. I was excited to get out this morning on the bike. So zone 2 just kept the heart rate in zone 2, and it was nice to just be outside for an hour. It was slightly warmer in the morning. It's been beautiful this week.
I thought it was cooler this morning.
It was
like 40, wasn't it? You said warmer.
I said warmer compared to like 30 degrees.
Yes.
It was like 45.
We've had some phenomenal afternoons. The weather,
Yes.
we might be turning a corner in the greater Cincinnati tri-state area for weather.
It's the fall spring. But
Yeah.
It was exciting to just get outside. I really digged our session on Saturday. That was fun. That was a highlight for me.
Yeah.
What about you?
We that was definitely a highlight. We got outside, did like a zone 2 to do some intervals.
Yep.
So did some. I think our coach messed up the intervals, but we went too hard. But it was great. So
I think I messed him up.
the bottom of the line was the intervals were more fun to have a training partner with you.
Yeah.
Just even we're not racing up the hills, but it was just nice to then descend down, chat real quick, and then just hit the set again. And then on the way back, just have someone to ride with for the next 45 minutes to an hour to get back to the car.
Yeah, it's true. It was more fun doing it together than
Yes.
it would have been doing it by myself.
Just
for
going
sure.
out solo, riding a long time, then doing hill
Yeah.
intervals for 6 minutes a set. Like,
Yeah.
that would not fun. So no, definitely a mini highlight of the week. All right. So we are going to be jumping in. Josh, why don't you kick us off on, because this one, I think this is more kind of your baby this week of what we want to talk about.
Sure.
So this is your passion project
That's my passion project.
that you've
I like
been
it.
really looking into. So go ahead and send it.
Send it. So Cycling Weekly had this really good article on the recent UF tariffs that will no doubt affect all cyclists out there. And I think we're about to see bike prices go up again, unfortunately.
More than like COVID, like the COVID price when we couldn't get anything.
I don't know. It's still TBD because these tariffs are really just hitting, and it will probably take these manufacturers of all these major brands a little bit of time to respond to see what these new prices will be. But it could be significantly higher than what we've seen before.
So talk me through then, what caught your attention about this, and what is something along the way that you've been like, oh, here's why it's going to impact so many people?
Well, I think it's helpful maybe to preface it with understanding what a tariff is, because it's one of those terms that gets thrown out there a lot, and honestly, I don't know that everybody knows exactly how the tariffs work. And for a large part, I didn't really know how tariffs work on a broad scale, but it was really helpful to think about if I'm buying a bike or thinking about buying a bike soon, this is something that would directly affect me, or even thinking about different components of, these major brands that you're potentially buying from, why these prices might be spiking again. And so just from a high level of how a tariff works, imagine you and I are both selling bikes at a bike shop.
Okay.
We both sell our bikes for $100 each.
Love it.
Yeah, great. But so customers would really buy these bikes based off their own preference, right? They might like your bikes a little bit more. They might like mine. Doesn't really matter because price is the same. With a tariff, though, imagine that you now got taxed 20% or $20 extra, and now you have to sell your bikes. You got a tax. I'm sorry. You had a tariff on your bikes, and now you have to increase your bike prices to up maybe let's say $20. So now you have to sell your bikes for $120 to make up that additional tax that you're getting incurred on.
Okay.
So
because mine's from somewhere overseas.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And so now you're selling your bikes for $120. I'm selling my bikes for $100. When people are looking at our comparing and contrasting, they might be more prone to buy a bike from me now just simply based on cost, right? Because mine are going to be cheaper than yours, even though beforehand we were selling them at the same price. So really, a tariff is just a tax that makes imported goods more expensive.
Okay.
And I don't know. You knew this. I didn't really know this. And I just thought it was interesting to think about most of the major bike brands out there are manufactured in Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was wild because
a lot of them are in the same factory.
Yes. I didn't know this. And so
let's take like an American brand like Specialized or Trek.
Yep.
You thought that all of their bikes were made here in-house in the U.S.?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And I think it's interesting because what's happening with the tariffs is there's two different things and we'll get into why every major bike brand manufacturer will be impacted by this. But essentially, there's two different tariffs that are happening. One, in February, the U.S. imposed an extra 10% tariff on all goods coming from China, including the bicycle and related components. Now, this is on top of an additional 10% tariff that was already from something that occurred earlier. So roughly 20% extra tariff coming in this year just from all imported goods coming from China, in particular the bicycles and related components. So that's one thing. The second thing is starting in March, there's now a broad 25% tariff on all imported steel and aluminum that will now be implemented. So when you add those two things together, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea of like, you know, when you think about these major bike brands going into being manufactured in Taiwan, I'm not going to go into it, but there is this interesting part of it where it's like, a lot of people could argue, like, is Taiwan a part of China or is it not? But just for simplicity's sake, it's often recognized as a part of China.
I think for the sake of the conversation and what we're talking about with tariffs, let's just assume it is.
Yes.
I don't think we...
because that goes into the whole history. I don't think we need to have that debate
and history of China, the politics around that in Taiwan and all that. But like, let's just say for the point of the tariffs, I believe it's pretty assumed that that portion of the world this applies to as well. Because most major brands are producing their factories for the frame sets in Taiwan.
Correct. Okay. I'm just going to go down this list because I think this is fascinating.
Okay.
Giant.
Yep.
Based in Taiwan.
Yeah. Number one bike seller in the world. Biggest bike manufacturer in the world is
I didn't know that. That's fascinating. I didn't know Giant was. Okay, so then you also have Cannondale, originally producing bikes in the U.S., now shifted most of its manufacturing to Taiwan and China.
Okay.
Cervelo, Canadian brand, manufactures its frame in Asia, primarily in China.
Yep.
Pinarello, Italian brand, most of its produced this bicycles in Taiwan. We've got Scott, a Swiss company, manufactures bicycles in Taiwan. The list just goes on. So the other thing is Trek. Trek manufactures a significant portion of its bicycles still overseas, but they do have some high-end models that are still made in the U.S.
So to my understanding, and you can even see it you used to, because I remember we have a Trek shop down from where I live, and the guy showed me. So it was only the SLR models, and it was only the Madones.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So not the Domani or the Amandas. It was the top end carbon Madones were made in Waterloo in the United States. And they even say, like, he showed me the sticker. This was a few years ago, but he showed me like where it says like made in Waterloo, like, or some like built in Waterloo, or So Trek does have like a wind tunnel and some carbon development happening.
Yeah.
But even for the sake of this, let's say that Trek Bikes, their number one bike seller is not the top of line carbon Madone race bike.
Right.
They're all their other stuff.
Correct.
I think for us, what we really forget is, because we're in this very niche racing.
Yeah.
When you go to any common bicycle shop and you ask them, what are the number one bikes you sell? They're all going to say, oh, the hybrids, the cruisers, the city bikes. Like they're not selling this. I mean, they sell the high end race bikes that are crazy expensive, like our dream bikes, but most of their stuff is that a low end aluminum entry level bike that the average consumer gets.
Well, and they're going to be hit with that, they're going to be hit with the prices on those bikes just because of that 25% tariff on all imported steel and aluminum. So we think typically carbon, for a lot of our bikes, but they're going to be hit with that. And you're right. I mean, not everybody's buying a carbon frame bike. Many aluminum frames are out there that are amazing, know, that they'll still have these price increases because of it. So
hang on. So let's say aluminum, for the purpose of this conversation, is the entry level, bicycle. So entry level, let's say $0, and then let's say you get into a decent, nice road bike, a nice aluminum road bike, $2,000.
Yeah.
Once you go past $2,000 in the price point, you're really getting into the low end carbon.
Yeah.
And then the higher you go, the higher carbon, the higher componentry. So with that settled, so it's definitely going to disrupt the average consumer getting into cycling. So bikes for kids, maybe their first road bike, their commuter bike, like that market. But because even if you have a carbon bike like we do, there's still a lot of componentry on it that's aluminum and steel. So there's steel bearings, there's aluminum spokes, there's sometimes aluminum wheels on the mid-tier bikes, the cranksets, the handlebars, like all these things have aluminum aspects to it. The chain. Yeah.
There's so many of it. And I imagine that just even taking the example of like a manufacturer like Specialized, who probably sells a crazy amount of aluminum frames, even though we might be interested in the idea of a carbon bike for buying through Specialized or even getting something through them, the Specialized still might raise their overall prices on all their bikes simply because they're getting hit with tariffs, and they're like, well, we're going to just increase our prices across the board until these tariffs go away. And ultimately that affects everybody. So I think it's a lose-lose for everybody. And it just sucks because doesn't it seem like bicycle prices are at a lower price than they were compared to COVID?
Yeah, I do want to get into that in a minute. Yeah. Because I've kind of come across some stuff the last 2 weeks before we got into the tariff talk. So I do want to cover current bike prices and the direction I thought we were going before the tariff thing hit.
Yep.
The question that I keep thinking is, so this is really going to, let's say you're an American brand like Specialized or Trek, but they're a global brand.
Yeah.
So they sell in Europe, Specialized sponsors multiple world tour teams.
Yeah.
I wonder, will this affect, even to offset any pricing, will it affect the pricing for people in other parts of the world?
It could.
Will they go cheaper because they're making more money off America, or will they go more expensive? I don't know how that's going to look, but it makes you wonder.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it'd be really difficult to answer that without having worked for the company.
Yeah.
And being able to say, well, even though we're getting hit from tariffs from one country, we're not going to increase our prices in Europe, for example, because that's where it's out of the realm of us knowing. But I think in general, if you're getting hit with tariffs from a major country like the US, you might it might make enough of a difference to where you just raise your prices overall. You know what I mean? Where it's like, if you're Specialized and you're thinking, well, we're getting hit with these tariffs and we're getting X amount of however many millions of people buying stuff from us in America compared to the rest of the world, whatever percentage of that from a budget item perspective from them, they would say, well, it's enough for us to raise prices across the board, affecting everybody.
Yeah. One thought I kind of have, because I try to think about things in the macro, how does this affect
everybody?
Yeah. And U.S. cycling, it's already not the most big popular sport here compared to Europe. It's definitely a European sport. Guys like us want to see this sport grow in America. We want to see American racing. We want to see, I'd love to see like the Tour of California come back as a grand tour or as a stage race that the pros came to, just stuff like that.
Yeah.
Does this almost make even more of a barrier to entry for people even getting into cycling now? Just in general, like, a bike is more expensive. I'm not going to do that now. I'm not going to get a bike. And so, because one of the things that got me into watching professional racing was a couple years after I just started riding, I would turn on TV and I could more appreciate what these pros are really putting their bodies through. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of think about it from that perspective. Like, does this kind of hurt the U.S. cycling as a whole, like with the fan base and growing that and trying to get to that market? I don't know. This is just me thinking out loud.
Well, it's an interesting thought because my mind goes to the used bike market.
Okay.
Where, I think ultimately it could hurt, but we don't know. Like, these tariffs could last a while or they could be short-lived. So it's hard to say from a macro level what the long-term impact would be. But I do think that because you're going to have higher bike prices, for these new bikes and all the components and things like that, it could push a lot more people into the used bike market. Yeah. Where this also could impact shops and brands in that capacity too, where it's like the tariffs not only impact, from buying new, but then also the used bike market, where it's like more people might gravitate towards like, well, I thought I was going to get this new bike, but now it's actually more expensive. I might just get a used bike, or I might go to a different type of bike entirely.
So I wonder if this could significantly be good for like the pros closet.
Yeah.
Where they're in the US selling all these bikes, but because they're selling used, they're not hit with these tariffs.
Yeah.
You sell your bike to them and you've already gone through the tariff process.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think the other thing it's interesting to think about too is because of so many all these major brands have manufacturing in Taiwan in different parts of the world, could we see a shift potentially to more domestic manufacturing? Now that's a big question for these brands that I'm sure they've thought through, and they ultimately might say, no, it's actually just much cheaper for us to do it there.
It's still cheaper just to pay the tariff.
Yeah. But it just is interesting to think about because you do have other American bike brands out there, but they have such a major hill to try and compete against these big major brands that have been around forever, the Specialized, the Trek, the Bianchis. It's like some of these brands like Stinner and others where it's so much harder to break into that, like becoming a household name, even though they might manufacture in the US. And so it's just that idea of like, could we see more of a shift towards that long term? Because if there's just tariffs, no matter what administration, it's like, I could understand that. I could understand the opportunity is for more American bike brands to say, yeah, we actually manufacture here, so we don't have to deal with this. We could sell our bikes for cheaper.
I didn't think about this because until you kind of reminded me, because I feel like I kind of watch like the tech aspects of bikes have always fascinated me. Yeah. Whereas a lot of people, yourself included, because you were sharing a few minutes ago, you think Trek, Specialized, you think American brand, you think, oh, American brand made in America. And I think most people think that. They're like, oh, Specialized, American brand. Like, that's cool. But they don't realize, your bike was just made in a factory in an assembly line process somewhere in a factory overseas. So I think a lot of people probably don't realize that.
Yeah. I think especially just going through that exercise of all these different bike brands, the major ones, right? So not every single brand, we didn't list off all of them, but a lot of these major ones, it's just interesting to know that most of them are just all manufacturing in potentially the same manufacturer over there.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot of good discussion on this. I've seen people talk about how I do know Specialized does a lot of protecting their brand so they can't get ripped off. They have a lot of quality control, quality assurance, oversight in their factory versus some of the other factories where that's, I think, where we're seeing a lot of these Chinese bikes coming onto the scene. But I do feel like that's kind of a whole separate discussion.
It is an interesting thought to hopefully think about from a specific brand that you might love, like a Specialized, to say, well, we know that like some of these Chinese knockoff bikes or, things that are coming out probably aren't coming out from Specialized. They might be coming out from another major bike brand, but I think it's interesting to think about some of these brands that might be more protective of that versus other brands that aren't. And as the consumer, now, how much do you care about that? How much do you care about that brand trying to protect these knockoffs from happening?
It's kind of interesting, and I'd never thought about this till now. There's a big trend in racing right now with trying out some of these Chinese branded bikes.
Yeah.
So they don't get, the warranty or the customer service that a lot of the other big brands get. But I'm seeing a lot of stuff on the internet, a lot of influencers, a lot of YouTube channels riding and racing Chinese branded carbon bikes, and they seem to be and hold up fine. And people gravitate to them because they're so affordable.
Yes.
But does that kind of cancel out now because because it's a Chinese bike, well, it's going to be hit with the same tariffs?
It's possible.
So even getting that cheaper Chinese bike, which let's say the quality is just as good as your top end or top branded bike, maybe it's not worth it to get those anymore.
Yeah, it's possible. Well, you said you sent this to me the other day, but you had sent me, because we're Specialized guys, you had mentioned that Specialized was the SL8 was at really the lowest or the same price, $7,000, right? Currently, that it was for us to buy an SL7 years ago, right?
Yeah. So that was one thing I wanted to talk about tonight. Was the last 2 weeks I've seen online a lot of deals happening right now.
Yeah.
Now, everything I'm about to say is kind of pre-COVID.
Yeah.
Setup here. So before COVID happened, traditionally in March, kind of the time we're in right now, is when bikes would go on sale. Mm-hmm. So large slashes in pricing to clear inventory to get ready for the Spring Classics release, and oftentimes getting your bike released before the Tour de France. So when the Tour happens, you can buy a bike. So very common to see sales in March and April. So the other night I started looking around, and I had a friend reach out to me about, he's looking to get a bike, and he's kind of in that mid to top mid-tier category of price range. So, and I was like, man, I started looking at Specialized website, and the pricing that I saw for the Tarmac was priced pretty much what it came out at pre-COVID.
Yeah.
So here, I'm going to be super quick with this. The SL7 released in 2020. Mm-hmm. And when the SL7 first released, I'm going to say we're going to stick with just the Pro model. Let's just go with this, all right? The Pro model was, when it released, $7,000. COVID starts happening, and there was some price ticks. So the first bump was only $200. It went to $7,200. A few months later, it went to $7,400. Now, I only know all this because after my accident, I was looking at getting a Tarmac, and that was kind of the bike that I was pricing out and trying to get when you couldn't get any bikes. Right. So it went to 74, and then it jumps up to like above 8. And then a year later, by 2022, 23, it was $9,000 for the Pro model. Yeah. Which is rewind 8 years ago, and that's what an S-Works would cost, under 10. Mm-hmm. So drastic increase. Now, they stayed at 9. The SL8 comes out, and the SL8 Pro for the past year has been marked at $9,000. And right now, the SL8 Pro is going for $7,000, which is what the Tarmac was priced when it first released. Yeah. So when I first saw this sale, I kind of thought, okay, this is kind of the classic. We're trying to dump all the really tiny bikes and all the giant bikes, like sizing,
the sizing that most people maybe don't.
The two ends of the spectrum for shorter people and taller people that they can't sell, because that's common too. Yep. And I looked, and every Pro model bike size was available in multiple colorways. So then I started looking just in general at the whole website, and pretty much almost every Tarmac was significantly marked down, some of them between $1,000 and $2,000. I saw similar deals with Canyon bikes up to $1,000 off for the SLX models, the CFR models. So I started looking around. I kind of started poking around. Let me find my little list here. So Cannondale, I found a CAD 13 for $700 off. Cervelo, I looked around, found some between $400 and $1,000 off. The point is, I had this thought, holy cow, are we returning to pre-COVID numbers? And now with everything happening, it's like, I don't know if I can confidently say that.
Yeah, I don't think it will. But it is interesting that would you say that now is the time to buy, given these tariffs?
Yes. So
if you were ready to purchase,
yeah,
now is the time. Don't wait months from now.
Yeah,
now.
if I were ready to pull the trigger and get a bike, I would say literally right now, because who knows, the tariffs are going to kick in, these bikes are going to sell, and then the 2026 models are going to start flooding, and they're going to be priced really high. So I think right now is the time to buy a bike if you're buying that mid to top tier. Because I was even seeing S-Works for $2,000 off.
Yeah,
so
which is great.
Yeah,
and I think just the idea of tariffs, they're meant to really protect the local manufacturing, but do they really help, or are they just making cycling in general more expensive? So we actually want to hear from you guys. We would love to know what you think of these tariffs. Too soon to freak out? Already freaking out? Do you just hate politics like we do? Let us know. We'd love to hear what you guys think of this. And yeah, it'll be really interesting to see what happens over the course of this year with this. I'll be fascinated to see what kind of impact this has.
Same. Okay, before we move on to our next segment, we want to take a minute and give a couple shout outs. We want to give a huge shout out to Road ID for not only supporting our podcast, but also letting us film right here at their headquarters. If you're a cyclist, runner, or just someone who wants peace of mind while out on the road, Road ID has you covered. Their medical IDs provide crucial info in case of an emergency, and they look great too. Do yourself a favor. Check out roadid.com and grab one today. Big thanks to the team at Road ID for their support. We also want to give a huge shout out to Kentucky Open Road Racing Series. They are partnering with us this year to bring you an exclusive deal. If you're looking to race in the Kentucky Open Road Racing Series this season, use the code BESPOKE15 at checkout for 15% off your registration. Whether you're a seasoned racer or just getting started, Coors has something for every level cyclist. This year, Coors is teaming up with Cannondale, and one lucky racer will be drawn to win a Cannondale Super 6 Evo 4. Enter all 4 races to quadruple your chances and come have a blast with us while we rip through the Kentucky countryside. Don't miss out. Sign up today and save. Head over to KentuckyORRS.com and use the code BESPOKE15 at checkout. That's BESPOKE15. Also, along with that, if you're not racing, you could just go volunteer and work the race.
Yeah, and still get a chance.
And still get a chance to win that bike.
Yep.
So
I was just going to say that my favorite part is always watching you spell bespoke on the screen, 15, because you still look down.
I do. I do follow this. I do have to. I just want to make sure I don't miss anything when we do a shout out to the people supporting our channel.
That's right.
Speaking of Coors, it was a lot of fun having Gary on last week.
Yeah, it really was. He's got an incredible story.
His whole story, I feel like if we could do it all again, I'd almost want to just be like, Gary, just give us these little nuggets of wisdom for racing and everything he had, like at the end.
Yeah.
If you tuned in just for the health stuff, like that was, his story is amazing, the healthier track that he's on, but even the tips at the end. Like if you missed that episode last week, you're going to want to go and
we're going to link it.
It's a great episode. Go check it out.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting part where we can get into, as we ourselves are getting into racing, we have a lot of people who are also in the same boat that maybe are newer to racing, or even in general, just more getting into cycling as a whole. And we had someone who wrote in to us, and I'd love to just kind of give you the opportunity to, because this was someone that you saw that wrote in, and they're getting into cycling, but
so I'm going to pitch this to you, because I'm going to like, I responded to this person, but I'm going to let you kind of hear what you think, and then I'll kind of throw out what I kind of said. So, all right. So this is what was written to me this past week. It says, this is from a friend of mine. He said, so over the last month or so, I've been trying to get back into running. Have not been consistent since 2020 probably, but the impact has been rough on my body, especially my calves. I'm wanting to do endurance training every day because that's what I enjoy, but my body can't handle the mileage yet. Have looked into Zwift as a possible cross-training alternative. Looks like a lot of fun. Two problems are I don't have any biking experience, and it seems like it has somewhat of a pricey entry.
It sure does.
So I guess my questions are, one, do you think Zwift is really good? I don't want to invest a bunch of money into it if it's not going to be beneficial and fun. And two, I was planning on probably just getting the Zwift ride setup, which is only an indoor trainer. That setup is roughly $1,300. What would you recommend something else? So I'm going to let you take those first. First off, is Zwift really good? Let's go with that one.
Zwift is great, but if I woke up in this person's shoes, that's not what I would do.
Okay.
What I would do is if I'm really considering just trying to get into cycling for the first time, I'll go out and buy a used bike, something relatively inexpensive, and I will go out and ride it for just several months. We're in the spring now. This is the time of year, especially if you're thinking about riding, great time to be outside riding. Go out in the afternoons, go out on the weekends, see if you actually enjoy riding the bike. Now, you might and say, yeah, I really like this. Now I really want to get better. It's like, great. I think that would be then step 2 come wintertime. That's where Zwift really.
Swift.
I always challenge.
You always say Swift.
It's the Zwift comes into play particularly a lot for cyclists, especially in the wintertime when the weather might not be so great, and it's an opportunity for that person to really get better without having to always wait to go outside. But if it was me and it was simply just trying to see if I could get into it, start with the used road bike, because that used road bike could then be hooked up to a trainer. I wouldn't even go with an expensive trainer. I would buy a really low-end trainer and just say, hey, if I enjoy riding outside, my next step would just be, great, I can hook this up to a really used like a cheap used trainer and see if I like even that element of the cycling. Now, if I do, then it becomes, now I can invest in getting an actual better trainer, then I can invest into getting a better road bike, whatever that case. But those are the first two things that I would do, because it doesn't make sense to go full on, I'm getting this really nice trainer. At least that's how I would do it.
Okay.
So because you might end up realizing you're like, I don't think this is as much fun.
Yeah.
And granted, we enjoy the trainer. They're fine.
Well, because of Zwift.
Yes.
I did the trainer before I had Zwift, and that was not enjoyable.
100%. Yes.
I would just try to find YouTube spin classes of old GCN videos.
Too. That's so funny. We have never talked about this.
That was my winter.
Those like hit classes?
Yes. Yeah. Those like 45 minutes hot hit training, like with back when like Matt Stevens was on the show.
What would you recommend?
Okay. So what I told him, because I know this person and I know he was a former collegiate runner and he is not wanting to sit around.
Yeah,
and I also know
sports,
that, and I know that his life, he has a first kid on the way, so he's hit with that kind of busy stuff that we're in. Yep. So what I told him is similar to what you said. You don't have to start new. And I said, the first question I asked is, will you ever plan on riding outside? Because if you want to go outside at all, that Zwift setup is only for indoor. Yeah. I think that's more for a setup of someone who like doesn't want to ride their road bike outside and just wants something that they can just have set up at all times. Yep. And like more of like a pretty dope Zwift indoor setup type thing going. So I told him, look in the used market for... actually, I said, you have a friend that doesn't ride right now that has a bike, borrow his bike.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then I said,
you don't even have to purchase it.
Yeah,
just
don't even
go borrow it.
And I was like, even if it doesn't fit you perfectly, like at least you can kind of get an idea. Yeah. Then you can get a bike that's your size. He did buy a trainer, so he owns a trainer now.
Oh, so he bought okay.
He bought a trainer.
He went full in on the
But
trainer.
but
Did he
went-
buy the Zwift?
He bought the Zwift Hub used. So he got it for like $300.
Okay. Okay.
And he's like, I got the trainer now. I can throw the bike on this and I can try it. And then if he ever wants to go outside, he has that option.
Okay.
But I basically said, look, like start used
Yeah.
and see if you like this.
Yeah.
And then if you want to dump money into this, fine. But any hobby that you pick up, no matter what it is, I don't think you should start off just buying the most. If I took up golf tomorrow, I'm not going to go buy $10,000 worth of clubs. I'm going to just go to a used garage sale and just get a crappy set just to learn how to hit a golf ball.
It'd be the same when I started getting into running, I was running on very, very cheap running shoes.
Yeah.
Just to see if I actually enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Turns out I did, but I didn't immediately go out and buy $150 shoes because I wouldn't have wanted to waste that money and being like, man, running is not for me.
And I think
that's the same for bikes.
Someone listening is going to make an argument of for running or getting the incorrect road size, well, you could get injured. But I'm like, if you're just getting into running,
that's not your major
you're not
concern.
doing the mileage yet to injure yourself. Same thing. So he needs a 56 and the bike he's going to be on is a 58. And I said, look, this is not going to fit you like a glove, but just see if you like Zwift and like spinning in your basement 100%. And then go and buy a bike. To which I then said, just buy Josh's bike.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Your old bike is available to this guy for sale.
Yep. Well, that's what I did when I first got into cycling. Bought a used bike just to see if I'd actually enjoy it. Turns out I loved it.
And here's the thing though. So $1,300 for the original setup he was looking at for a bike that can only be ridden inside.
Yep.
And a nice trainer. So he's getting a pretty equitable trainer and a potential bike for almost half of the original cost. And he'll have options to go outside if he wants.
Yeah.
So that's the setup that I would 100% go with.
Yeah, I think it's great. All right, now we're going to move into our segment called Cycling Trends of the Week. And why don't you kick this off?
Okay. So
Strade Bianchi.
This last week was one of the spring classics, Strade Bianchi. So highlights of the race at right around 50 kilometers to go. Tadej Pogačar had a crash. Let's just say he took a corner too tight, bad alignment, slipped off, literally like skid off the road into a ravine or like a small ditch or thorn bushes. But and then immediately got up, jumped on the bike, then ran into a bike change issue because the bike was broke. But still, long story short, managed to win the race. So,
my simple question
are we
is
surprised?
Just, is he human? Have we checked? Is he part AI? I don't know if we've fully checked if he's just half
well, I think
AI,
what you're talking
alien.
about for that is when he dropped Pidcock.
Yeah.
And it was classy of Pidcock that they kind of waited for him a little bit. They worked together.
He said he waited. People debated that, but he said he waited.
Oh, you could see him looking back, and then he sat up. But when they went kind of mano-y-mano, he held 630 watts for a minute and 6 seconds to drop Pidcock.
Yeah, at the end. It's just incredible. And it looks like his 630 watts for a minute 6 is not that difficult for him.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
I mean, Pidcock is no joke of a rider. Like he
had a great
strong.
performance.
He's won that race before.
Yeah, he's a great performance.
I'm gonna probably botch this. I know Tadej now. I believe they said he's the only person to be the reigning world champion and win that race.
Not true.
Not true.
Women's last year.
Okay. The only male then.
Only male.
And was he the only back-to-back winner to win that? Or was that they were comparing him to someone like 20 years ago? That was the part I missed.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I will say about his crash, like I watched it. When I turned it on, I just like that's what I turned it on to. So I had to go back and kind of find what happened. But I feel like any crash is horrible. I feel like he was really fortunate in the sense that when he slid off the road, he slid straight into grass versus, could you imagine if there would have been a curb there that he'd just that would have been broken bones for sure.
Yeah, I don't think he would have gotten up and
he was descending fast. And he even said at the end, like, I've descended that hill like 50 times. I don't know what happened. When you look at the footage, you can see Pidcock has a way better line. He's way more outside, swinging in than swinging out, whereas Tade's kind of in the middle and just takes it a little quick and a little sharp.
Yeah.
But it was definitely...
It's impressive. It's really impressive, just that grit. I think that at the end of the day, you think about he's obviously the best cyclist in the world overall, it's any category. And it's just the idea for him. It's that, man, even a wreck, which would take out most even pro racers and be like, yeah, you know what? I wrecked. I didn't feel as good. My legs hurt. My back hurts. My shoulder. It's like, no, go out, keep riding, grit through it.
Yep.
I know he was in a lot of pain, but it's that adrenaline that kept him going to say, you know what? I'm not out of this.
It was definitely differently entertaining than last year. So last year was kind of that Babe Ruth, he called his shot from 80 kilometers out, attacked and just went solo, which was amazing. This added a lot of excitement. Yeah. Like last year was exciting to see that. This year was also exciting in a very different way.
Yeah.
Like I watched it. My parents were over. My mom is gasping. My dad, who doesn't really watch cycling, is like, I can't believe he just rode this guy away and made it look easy.
Yeah.
So it was definitely entertaining.
Yeah. Very entertaining.
What else for trends of the week?
Paris-Nice.
Paris-Nice is underway.
Yeah. That's right. So who are you rooting for in this race? I'm curious. Do you have a guy that you're really excited that you would hope would win it all?
It'd be cool to see Matteo Jorgensen.
Yeah.
I like that he's American. I feel like he won it last year. I don't know if Jonas will let him win.
Might not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's got to be hard to be, on a team like that where you have a very clear star, a very clear number one guy.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you advance on that? Like where you go from, I'm working for him, but suddenly it's like, I've got a lot of ability and talent to win some of these really hard races.
Yeah.
I'd also be okay with Brandon McNulty.
Yeah. Another American.
UAE, another American. That'd be interesting to kind of see some Americans really coming onto the scene.
Do you think it's Jonas's race to lose?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, the most recent stage, he didn't look as good on stage. What was today? Today was
it 5?
Four or 5?
Yeah.
The one where it was the uphill finish and he got caught.
Yeah.
By the UAE by Juan Ayuso.
Yeah.
He did not look as dominant as he has. Now, granted,
I think Ayuso put in a crazy effort though.
Yeah.
I think it was more about him than it was a reflection on Jonas, because that was an incredible effort to catch him and ultimately overpower him those last couple meters. So.
Here's the thought I had, because you and I are both really big Tade fans.
Yeah.
And I think if Tade didn't exist, I think we'd both be Jonas fans.
Yeah.
Like
probably.
He's not a jerk. He seems like a likable guy. He performs and delivers when it's time to perform and deliver.
Yeah.
I think what makes Tade so fascinating is that he can win the Grand Tours and the Classics, the one-day races, where usually in a situation like that, you're rooting for two different people. So you're pulling for your Van der Poels and Wout van Aerts for the one-day Classics, and then your GC guys in the Tour, these grand stages, your Primoz Roglic's, your Remco's, your Jonas, whereas it's like Tade can win it all. And it's like, gosh, how do you root for anybody else?
Yeah. Well, he's like just a modern day Eddie Merckx.
Yeah.
It really can do literally any race.
Did you see that thing I sent you a few weeks ago where it had a side-by-side of like winning
compared to him and Jonas?
Yeah, Jonas and Tade comparative.
Yeah,
like,
it's not even close.
Yeah, it was like, I think Jonas total wins was like 30, 31. Tade was like 90 something.
Yeah. But it makes sense because Jonas doesn't participate in all the things that Tade does. So
correct.
Yeah.
So no, it's been Paris-Nice has been fun. The last thing I want to kind of throw on this, and this might how do you watch pro cycling?
Are you asking what platform I watch?
Like how do you, because
typically Peacock.
Okay, so that's only a very limited amount of races.
Yeah.
Like Strade Bianchi was not on Peacock; it was on Max.
Yeah, I typically end up watching a lot more of the highlights.
Okay.
After the fact, I won't typically watch the full race.
Would you ever get a Flow Bikes membership to just watch it all? Possibly. Okay.
Yeah. Of all the different things that I'm currently have on my monthly budget for biking.
Yeah.
I don't want to typically add one more right now, but I would potentially.
I think I think that might be my Christmas ask next year.
Yeah.
Is like a Flow bike subscription, because
nice.
I hate, like, if I watch it on Max, I'm actually liking the coverage more on Max. There's like no commercials.
Oh.
The European commentators are great, and it's the full 6-hour race.
Yeah.
Peacock will only do, like Paris-Nice, they only do the last 2 hours. So you only come in at like 40 kilometers left, and you're like, that's not fun. And then there's another one too. There's Peacock, there's HBO Max, and I think there's another one in America that I'm missing. Someone will probably comment, but Flow Bikes, I think, has it all. So.
Yeah, I know. I've recently been watching a lot more from Flow, but not the full.
I hate that it just makes it in this country really hard to watch professional racing. And then even going back to kind of the very beginning of the podcast when we're talking about tariffs, it's like, the entry in this country to watch this fun worldwide sport is just not easy. We can't find it on TV easily. Yeah. And now we can't even go ride a bike easily. So
that's right. All right, now let's get into the segment of rapid fire. So I want to ask you this. Do you clean your bike after every outdoor ride?
I try to, but like not like
really?
Not a crazy deep clean.
Okay.
So if it gets really dirty, I'll do a quick wash or a wash with a hack that I have. Like I have another hack.
You got another hack?
Yeah, I got another hack.
We got another video coming?
Yeah, I just got to wait for my bike to get really dirty. So I just got to go like ride it through some like dirt or mud or something. But no, after a very typical, like let's say a very kind of dry, just you get some dust on it. I use the, I got them from our bike shop, mechanic wipes. So they're like these wipes that have almost like a little bit of a grit in them. And they really, I'll go over the frame and then I'll kind of wipe like the the crankset and stuff like that down and just get all that kind of dirt and grime off. Yeah. And they work great. So I'll do that after every ride just about. Yeah. And then if it's crazy dirty, I'll do a quick wash. What do you do? Or do you wash it?
I do. I definitely don't wash it after every ride. It really depends on if it was really dirty, I will definitely wash it. But I don't often wash it that same day. I might the next day. I usually don't like to wait very long. But I typically have the same wipes that you do from the shop. Yeah. Where at least at a minimum, if it's most rides outside, I will typically wipe it down a little bit. Yeah. Just to clean it off and get most of the stuff out of there.
And usually unless you do something crazy where it's rained or you ride through a ton of mud or something, usually one wipe will take care of the whole bike. True. And make it look
great.
Like very clean. Yeah. All right, I've got one for you. Okay. Do you charge your, let's say, not headlight because those drain so quick, but let's say tail light and bike computer before every ride?
100%.
That's
you
stupid.
don't?
No, that's stupid. Why? Those things, I mean, like my Wahoo lasts like at least 4, maybe 5 rides. Like
it's true. It's just I don't know. I know that's true. I just have always done it.
So hang on.
And I think that it's probably just that somewhere in my brain thinking that, I should, if I didn't charge it enough, I wouldn't know I would start the ride and find myself at like 30% or 20%. And then I end up thinking about like, oh man, I should have just charged this.
So your ride today, you were out for like an hour. Yeah. And you're going to charge it before you go out next time.
But it takes only a few minutes, to charge some of these things. So
I mean, so when I turn it off,
it's that peace of mind for me.
Okay.
I don't know any other way to describe it.
I'll look at like when I turn it off, my Wahoo will tell me what the percentage is,
and you'll get excited about like.
I know if it's 15%. Like 30, no, if it's above 20, I'm like, oh, that's at least like an hour and a half ride. So like if I'm doing a Z2, like something small, like I don't need to charge it. It's fine. It's fine.
You live life on the edge, my friend.
I mean,
I would worry about that, especially if I'm riding. And I would think about, am I going to be able to finish this ride with this battery?
I get more. In the last year, I have had my old Garmin died once, but it was fully charged. So one, it was old, but
that doesn't apply.
no, it died because it was one of my trip to Columbus, so like 130 miler, and we stopped for a long lunch.
Yeah,
like we were just kicking back eating lunch for like an hour and a half, and the Garmin just stayed on the whole time. So when I got to like just outside Columbus, it basically died the last 10 miles, and I had to like Strava phone, which was such a bummer because that was my longest ride record. And I was like,
that actually is the worst.
Yeah. Okay, so it is getting to be nicer weather.
Yep.
We're like this week we've been in the 70s, but you know we're now getting into that kind of false spring.
Yep, getting closer to spring.
We're not in the 30s and 40s. We're starting to get to the 50s. So, what, in your opinion, is the most essential piece of kit to wear in 50-degree weather?
Bib shorts and a jersey. I don't wear very much during this kind of weather.
Are you serious? Like you don't put like sleeves on or knee warmers?
No, I run hot.
Are you serious? Like you don't put...
50 degrees is usually my like deciding between putting on maybe some leg warmers or maybe some sleeves.
Like the removable ones?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I like to probably still even... 50 degrees is still... Especially if you get in 20 minutes in the ride, I feel really good.
Are you serious? I'm freezing at 50. Like if I went out with just short sleeves. I would say...
What's yours?
The Gillet.
Yeah.
The first time I ever got one, I saw them and I was like, these things are so gimmicky. They're so expensive. And I got one from LaCall for recommending a friend. So like I got a nice Gillet and I put it on and I was like, oh my gosh, these things actually work.
Yeah.
Like a form-fitting one.
Yeah,
really is awesome.
Well, I'll give you this. So go much colder in the temperature in the winter riding. So anywhere from that range of 30 to 40, 45 degrees. My most essential part of my, essential piece of kit is a neck gaiter.
Okay.
Because I just find it's so nice. The ones that I have, these really inexpensive ones that I bought off at Amazon years ago, super breathable and just keep me warm. Okay. Keep my mouth warm. I don't usually have a ton of issues with my, glasses fogging up too much during these, but it's so nice. And if I don't have one and it's cold, it just makes for a completely different ride.
It ruins your experience.
Yeah, it ruins my ride. Yeah.
I've been trying them this year covering the nose and I fog a little when I slow down. If I'm going like at a normal speed, the fog goes away. But so does that happen to you or?
A little bit, but usually I think I've just gotten going into such a habit where I'll usually just either pop it down. If I'm like, I'm stopping really quick, I'll just pop it down so I don't have it fog up. It's just almost like second nature to me.
When we went out Saturday, it started colder. It warmed up a little.
Yeah.
And I was trying to cover my mouth, and I find I'm like, I can't have a conversation right now. Like, I'm having to, like, pull it down every 2 seconds to say a word. Like, so how was your week? Put it back up.
That's right.
All right, let us know in the comments what you think of the tariff situation in the United States, and what is the most essential piece of cooler weather kit. Not necessarily colder, but cooler weather kit. Let us know in the comments.
All right, we'll see you guys next week.
See ya.